They told you it was just a comet. They gave it a name 3i. Atlasan showed you blurry photos of a rock drifting harmlessly through the void. They brought out the astrophysicists in their white coats to assure you that the trajectory was stable,
Incredible.
that the mathematics was sound, and that the probability of impact with Earth was 0. They lied, not about the trajectory the rock will indeed miss us, but they lied about what it is. Have you noticed the world lately? Have you felt the sudden, inexplicable rise in panic? The irrational anger in the streets? The feeling of impending doom that wakes you up at 3 a.m., sweating for no reason? That isn't just the news cycle. That isn't just stress. That is a frequency. The object approaching our sun is not a dead piece of ice and dust. It is a conscious cosmic mirror. It does not reflect light. It reflects emotion. And right now, it is holding a magnifying glass to the darkest fears of humanity, amplifying our collective terror back at us in a feedback loop that threatens to tear civilization apart before the object even reaches its perihelion. This is not a story about a collision of matter. This is a story about a collision of minds. To understand the nature of the threat, we must go to the place where the silence is loudest, the Atacama Desert in Chile, the driest place on Earth, a landscape so alien that NASA uses it to test Mars rovers. Here, perched on a desolate plateau 5,000 meters above sea level, lived Dr. Nathan Cross. At 41 years old, Nathan was a man running away from the noise. A general practitioner by trade, he had abandoned the frantic emergency rooms of Chicago to become the resident medical officer for a remote astronomical observatory. He told his family he took the job for the money. He told himself he took it for the quiet. But in truth, he took it because he wanted to be closer to the stars. He was a man suspended between the cold logic of science and a burning, unspoken spiritual longing. He looked at the night sky not just as data points, but as a question he couldn't quite phrase. On the night of October 14th, the question was answered. The alarm didn't sound like a siren. It sounded like a scream. The seismic monitors at the station spiked red, but the ground didn't roll like an earthquake. It shuddered with a singular, violent impact located 3 miles from the main dome. While the astronomers argued over sensor data, Nathan grabbed his medical kit and jumped into his Jeep. He drove into the pitch-black desert, guided only by a plume of smoke that wasn't rising, but hovering. He expected a meteorite. He expected a satellite crash. What he found in the center of the crater was a biological impossibility. Lying in the scorched sand was a figure. It was humanoid, but its proportions were wrong: limbs too long, chest too broad. It was bleeding, but the blood wasn't red. It was a shimmering, silvery blue fluid that glowed in the starlight, smelling of ozone and petrol. The being who would later identify himself as Leon was gasping for air, his silver eyes wide with pain. Nathan's medical training screamed contagion. His survival instinct screamed run. But his soul did something else. It recognized the suffering. Ignoring the logic that had ruled his life, Nathan knelt in the radioactive dust, applied a tourniquet to the alien's arm, and dragged him into the Jeep. That act of compassion was the key. It unlocked a gratitude in the visitor that transcended language. 2 hours later, stabilized in the clinic, Liren opened his eyes. He didn't speak with his mouth. He projected a thought directly into Nathan's mind, a thought that carried the weight of a planetary warning. "You are afraid of the rock hitting your world," Liren projected, his mental voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. "But the rock is not a weapon. It is a mirror. 3. I-Atlas is a crystallized consciousness. It absorbs the dominant frequency of the planet it approaches and reflects it back, amplified 1,000 times. Your world is terrified, Nathan Cross. And because you are terrified, the mirror is screaming your own fear back at you. You are driving yourselves mad with your own reflection. This revelation changes everything. The enemy is not the comet. The enemy is us. We are currently locked in a psychic death spiral with a celestial object that is simply showing us who we are. But Lyran revealed there is a way out. The mirror reflects whatever is projected at it. This is a test. It is an opportunity for humanity to choose between two timelines, total chaos or great awakening. If you want to know how to break the feedback loop, if you want to know how to become an anchor of peace in a world going insane, then subscribe now. The diagnosis is in. The treatment is about to begin. To understand why the universe chose Nathan Cross to be its anchor, you first have to understand the geography of his isolation. The Atacama Desert is not just a place. It is a state of mind. It is the driest place on Earth, a landscape of rusted rock and salt flats that looks more like the surface of Mars than the home of a human being. Here, the air is so thin it leaves you breathless, and the silence is so absolute it creates a ringing in your ears. Dr. Nathan Cross lived here, perched on a desolate plateau 5,000 meters above sea level, in a small medical module attached to the Event Horizon Observatory. At 41 years old, Nathan was a man who had systematically dismantled his own life. 5 years ago, he was a rising star in the emergency medicine department of a top-tier Chicago hospital. He was the guy you wanted when the gunshot victim rolled in at 2 a.m. He had the hands, the speed, and the clinical detachment. But he also had a shadow, while his colleagues went home to their families or their expensive condos. Nathan went home to books on astrophysics, consciousness, and ancient philosophy. He was a man suspended between two worlds. By day, he practiced the rigid, materialist science of Western medicine, fixing broken bones, stitching skin, treating the body like a complex biological machine. But by night, he was haunted by a burning, unspoken suspicion that the machine theory was a lie. He saw patients die, and he physically felt something leave the room. He saw patients recover against all odds because they had a reason to live, a phenomenon his textbooks dismissed as statistical anomalies. Nathan felt betrayed by his own profession. He felt that modern science had become a religion of the material, obsessed with measuring the hardware while completely ignoring the software. He was starving for a truth that couldn't be found under a microscope. He wanted to know if there was a pulse to the universe itself. So he ran. He took the job in the Atacama, not for the money and not for the prestige. He told his family he needed a break. He told himself he needed perspective. But the truth was, Nathan Cross went to the desert because he wanted to be closer to the stars. He wanted to put his ear against the chest of the cosmos and listened for a heartbeat. But the desert is a cruel teacher. 3 years into his exile, the romanticism had worn off, leaving only the grinding reality of solitude. His life had shrunk to a loop of mundane routines, checking the vitals of the 12 astronomers stationed there, treating dehydration, stitching up the occasional cut from a jagged rock, and spending his nights staring through a telescope at cold, silent gas giants. The possibility he had sought had curdled into a heavy, suffocating resignation. The stars didn't speak to him. They just burned, distant and indifferent. He began to internalize the terrifying thought that perhaps the materialists were right. Maybe we are alone. Maybe consciousness is just a chemical accident, a fleeting spark in a dead, dark void. His isolation, which started as a form of self-preservation, a way to shield his sensitive nature from the chaotic noise of the city, had mutated into a high-security prison. He was safe, yes, but he was hollow. He was a healer who had no one to heal, a seeker who had stopped seeking. He had built a fortress of silence so strong that even God couldn't get in. And then came the night the sky fell. It was October 14th. The routine was shattered not by a patient, but by the planet itself. The seismic alarm didn't wail. It screamed. The ground beneath the medical module lurched violently, knocking Nathan's coffee cup off the table. It wasn't the rolling wave of an earthquake. It was a singular, concussive impact, like a hammer striking an anvil, while the astronomers scrambled to check their precious telescope arrays. Yelling about sensor calibration and tectonic shifts, Nathan felt a pull. It wasn't scientific. It was visceral. He grabbed his emergency trauma kit, a reflex honed by years in the Unda, ran to his jeep. He didn't wait for orders. He drove out into the pitch-black desert, guided only by a plume of smoke that defied the wind, rising straight up like a pillar of grey ink against the starlight. He drove for 3 miles over terrain that would break a lesser vehicle. His headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating only rocks and dust, until the beam landed on the crater. It wasn't a meteorite. Meteorites don't have holes. Meteorites don't have geometry. Lying in the center of the scorched sand was a vessel, or what was left of one. It was small, sleek, and shattered, glowing with a dying amber light. And thrown clear of the wreckage, half buried in the debris, was a body. Nathan stopped the jeep. The engine idled, a rough mechanical purr in the silence. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. This was the moment every human being dreads and dreams of, the unknown. His medical training screamed biohazard, radiation, contagion. His survival instinct, the primal part of his brainstem, screamed monster, run. But Nathan Cross was a doctor, and more than that, he was a man who had spent 3 years begging the universe for a sign. He opened the door. The air smelled of ozone and something metallic, like blood on a copper coin. He walked toward the figure, his boots crunching on the glass turned sand. The being was humanoid, but wrong. It was too tall, its limbs elongated and elegant. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, but it was the blood that stopped Nathan in his tracks. The creature was bleeding profusely from a jagged wound in its side, but the fluid wasn't red. It was a shimmering, silvery blue liquid that glowed in the dark, pulsing with its own faint light. Nathan stood over the alien. It was conscious. It looked up at him with eyes that were entirely silver, no pupil, no iris, just 2 pools of liquid mercury. In those eyes, Nathan didn't see a threat. He didn't see a conqueror. He saw pain. He saw the universal, undeniable language of suffering. The creature gasped a wet, rattling sound and clutched its side. In that second, the conflict in Nathan's soul ended. The scientist who wanted to analyze the specimen died. The coward who wanted to run away died. The healer took over. The Hippocratic Oath does not specify species. It is a vow to protect life. Nathan dropped to his knees in the radioactive dust. He didn't put on a hazmat suit. He ripped open his trauma kit. He put his hands, his bare human hands, onto the alien flesh. It was hot, feverish, vibrating with an energy that made his own nerves tingle. "Hold on," Nathan whispered, his voice cracking in the dry air. "I've got you. You're not dying here. Not tonight." He applied a pressure bandage to the wound, the silver-blue blood soaking into the white gauze, staining his hands with the light of another world. He worked with the efficiency of the trauma surgeon he used to be, ignoring the impossibility of the anatomy, focusing only on the flow, the pressure, the life. He didn't know it yet, but this was the test. The cosmic mirror was already watching him. If Nathan had reacted with fear, if he had run away or attacked, the story would have ended there. But he reacted with compassion. He chose to connect rather than recoil. In the middle of the most desolate place on earth, the lonely doctor finally found someone to save. And in saving the stranger, he had unknowingly forged the first link in a chain that would pull humanity back from the brink of madness. He loaded the being into the passenger seat of the Jeep, strapping him in. He looked at the stars one last time before getting in. They didn't look cold anymore. They looked like they were watching. "Let's go," Nathan said, shifting the Jeep into gear. He drove back toward the lights of the observatory, carrying the answer to his life's greatest question bleeding out in the seat beside him. The isolation was over. The connection had begun. The medical module at the Event Horizon Observatory was designed to treat dehydration, altitude sickness, and the occasional broken bone. It was not designed for this. Nathan Cross stood over the stainless steel table, his gloves slick with the luminous, silver-blue fluid that served as the visitor's blood. The room smelled intensely of ozone and electrified copper, the scent of a lightning strike contained in a bottle. On the table lay Lyran. Under the harsh halogen lights, the alien's physiology was a map of impossibilities. His skin was pale grey, possessing a texture smooth as dolphin skin but tough as Kevlar. His chest did not rise and fall with the rhythm of lungs. Instead, a series of gill-like vents along his ribs fluttered with a rapid, shallow vibration. Nathan's mind was racing, defaulting to his ER training to keep the panic at bay. Airway, breathing, circulation. But did this thing even breathe oxygen? Did it have a heart? Nathan placed his stethoscope on the center of the being's chest. He didn't hear a He heard a hum, a high-speed, organic worry sound, like a turbine spinning in liquid. It was fast, erratic, and fading. "Come on," Nathan muttered, sweat stinging his eyes. "Stay with me." The primary wound was a jagged laceration across the being's abdomen, likely caused by the tearing metal of the ship's hull during impact. But looking closer, Nathan realized it wasn't a clean cut. The edges of the wound were cauterized, but not by heat. They were charred black, crackling with microscopic residual energy. Energy burns. Nathan diagnosed aloud, his voice trembling slightly. Whatever hit him, it wasn't just a rock. It was highly charged. He reached for a scalpel, intending to debride the dead tissue. But as the steel blade touched the alien skin, a spark jumped. Zap, Nathan flinched. The biology was bioelectric. Using metal tools was like sticking a fork in a toaster. He threw the scalpel into the tray and grabbed a ceramic cauterizer instead. "Okay," Nathan breathed, focusing his entire universe on the 3 inches of torn flesh before him. "We have to seal this." He began to work. It was a nightmare of improvisation. The silver blood didn't clot like human blood. It behaved more like mercury, beading up and rolling off the skin. Nathan had to use surgical staples, driving them deep into the tough fascia to pull the wound closed. Every time he touched the internal tissue, the being on the table twitched. a ripple of blue light flashing under its skin like a bioluminescent wave. This was the frontier of medicine. There were no textbooks here. There was only the instinct of the healer. Nathan worked for an hour, his hands moving with a precision that defied his fear. He cleaned the wound with saline, praying that sodium chloride wasn't toxic to the species, and managed to stop the bleeding. He wrapped the torso in sterile gauze, which instantly soaked up the glowing fluid. Turning the bandages into bands of neon light, Nathan stepped back, stripping off his glowing gloves. He checked the monitor he had rigged up. The worry sound in the chest was steadying. The Gilvans were fluttering more rhythmically. I think we got it, Nathan exhaled, leaning against the counter. Adrenaline crash imminent. He looked at the face of the patient. Lyron's eyes were closed. His features were sharp, angular, noble. Even in unconsciousness, he radiated a presence that filled the sterile room. Nathan felt a strange compulsion. He wanted to check the temperature again, not with a thermometer, but with touch. He wanted to feel the life he had just saved. He reached out and placed his bare hand on Lyron's forehead. The skin was cool, like polished stone, and then the universe opened up. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a sound. It was an invasion. The moment Nathan's skin touched Lyron's, a shockwave of data slammed into his brain. It felt like being submerged in a freezing ocean instantly. His vision went white. The room dissolved, geometric shapes, spirals of gold, the sensation of falling, a vast, star-filled void, the feeling of sorrow, the feeling of gratitude, a mathematical equation for safe. Nathan gasped, pulling his hand back as if burned. He stumbled, gripping the edge of the table. "Do not withdraw." The words didn't come from the mouth of the alien. They blossomed in the center of Nathan's parietal lobe, resounding with the clarity of a bell. The voice was dual-layered, a harmonic chord of sound and feeling. Nathan stared at the table. Lyron's eyes were open. They were pools of liquid silver, swirling with conscious intent. They locked onto Nathan's eyes, and the connection solidified. It wasn't just hearing, it was feeling. Nathan could feel the dull ache in Lyron's side. He could feel the exhaustion of the crash, and underneath it all, he felt a profound ocean-deep calmness. You can speak," Nathan whispered, his voice shaking. "I am projecting," the thought voice replied. "Your language is crude, linear. It is difficult to compress my thoughts into your words. But we are connected now. Touch facilitates the bridge. You saved this vessel." "I'm a doctor," Nathan said, reverting to his identity as a shield. "I fixed the leak. That's what I do." "You did more than mechanics," Lyron countered. "I felt your intent. I felt the vibration of your hands. You were afraid, yet you acted. This is a rare frequency on your world." Lyron slowly sat up. The movement was fluid, graceful, despite the injury. He looked at the bandages on his torso, then at the ceramic tools Nathan had used. He nodded, a human gesture of approval. "My craft encountered debris," Lyron explained, answering the question forming in Nathan's mind. "Not a weapon, a fragment of a defunct satellite in low orbit. A kinetic impact at velocity. My shields were modulated for solar radiation, not physical collision." It was an error of navigation. "A car crash," Nathan breathed, a nervous laugh escaping him. "You traveled light years just to have a fender bender in Chile." "Distances are relative," Lyron said. "But yes, I required assistance. And you were the signal I tracked. The alien swung his legs off the table and stood up. He towered over Nathan, 7 feet of slender power. But he didn't loom. He radiated a gentle curiosity. He moved closer to Nathan, his silver eyes scanning not just the doctor's body, but the space around him. "May I?" Lyran asked, extending a long finger toward Nathan's chest. Nathan stood frozen. "What are you doing?" "Diagnosis," Lyran said. "You've repaired my physical vessel. Permit me to scan your energetic one." I sense a heavy dissonance. Before Nathan could object, Lyran's finger stopped an inch from Nathan's heart. He didn't touch the shirt. He traced a shape in the air. Nathan felt a warmth spread through his chest, followed by a sudden tightness in his throat. It was the feeling of holding back tears, amplified 100 times. "So the panic we're seeing," Nathan began, his voice barely a whisper. "The riots in London, the stock market crash, the hoarding. You're saying we created that storm, that it's just ... us scaring ourselves." "You created the weather, Nathan," Lyran corrected, stepping down from the table. "But you did not create the hurricane. Something else is turning up the wind velocity." The alien waved his long hand again. The hologram of the human aura dissolved, replaced by a grand, rotating projection of the Sol system. The sun burned gold in the center. The planets orbited in their clean, mathematical ellipses, but cutting through the plane of the ecliptic, moving at a steep, aggressive angle, was an intruder. A jagged, dark object labeled 3I, Atlas. "We've been tracking it for months," Nathan said, finding his footing in the familiar data. "It's an interstellar object. Anomalous trajectory, high entry speed. We think it's a fragment of a disintegrated planet or an outgassing comet. But the calculations are solid, Lyran. I've checked them myself. It's going to miss Earth by millions of miles. There is absolutely no danger of impact." "There is no danger of kinetic impact," Lyran said, his tone dismissing the physical threat as trivial. "You are looking at the rock and missing the soul. Your scientists are obsessed with mass and velocity. They see a bullet and calculate if it will hit the target, but they fail to ask if the bullet is alive." Nathan froze. He turned slowly to face the alien. "Alive? Are you saying it's a ship?" "No, not a ship. A tool." Lyran walked to the window, placing his hand against the glass as if he could touch the object across the void. 3I, Atlas, is not a dead piece of ice and dust drifting aimlessly through the cosmos. It is a construct. It is a conscious entity, crystallized in material form. Think of it as a roving buoy in the ocean of the galaxy. But it does not scan with radar, Nathan. It scans with resonance, a probe. "A cosmic mirror," Lyran declared, the title ringing with a terrifying grandeur. "It is composed of a hyperdense, psychoreactive material that your periodic table has no name for. It is sensitive to the electromagnetic signature of consciousness. Its function is simple, ancient, and automatic. It absorbs the collective consciousness of the planet it approaches. It samples the dominant frequency of your species. And then it reflects it back." Nathan blinked, trying to process the scale of the claim. "It reflects us. It amplifies us," Lyran corrected. "It is a feedback loop. Think of a microphone placed too close to a speaker. What happens?" "Feedback," Nathan said instantly. "A screech, noise. It gets louder until it blows the amp. Precisely. Earth is the speaker. Atlas is the microphone, and right now the volume is turning up. Liren turned back to the hologram. He pointed to Earth, which was pulsing with a chaotic, muddy red light, the frequency of fear. Then he pointed to Atlas. As the object moved closer to Earth in the simulation, it began to glow with the exact same red light, but brighter, blindingly brighter. And it was beaming that red light back at Earth, right now. Liren explained, "Your planet is emitting a low-level background hum of anxiety, greed, tribalism, and separation. You have lived with this noise for centuries. You think it is normal. But Atlas picked up that signal weeks ago when it crossed the orbit of Jupiter. It absorbed it. It processed it. And now, as it approaches your inner solar system, it is beaming that signal back to you, magnified 1,000 times." The realization hit Nathan like a physical weight, forcing him to grab the counter for support. The pieces of the last few weeks clicked into place. The sudden, irrational anger he had seen in the news, the way his sister called him crying over nothing, the way world leaders were posturing for war over trivialities, the way he himself had woken up 3 nights in a row, sweating, gripped by nameless dread. "My God," Nathan whispered, horror dawning in his eyes. "It's an echo chamber. It's echoing our own nightmares back at us. And because the signal is amplified," Liren continued, "your population is reacting with hysteria. You feel the fear, but you don't know where it's coming from. The external world hasn't changed enough to justify this level of panic. So, your minds invent reasons. You project the terror onto the screen of reality. You hoard food because you feel a spiritual hunger. You buy guns because you feel a cosmic vulnerability. You attack your neighbors because you cannot fight the shadow in the sky. You are fighting the reflection of your own collective psyche, projected by a giant mirror in the void." "Why?" Nathan demanded, a surge of anger rising in his chest. "Why would anyone build such a thing? Is it a weapon? Is it trying to drive us mad so it can invade? It is not a weapon, Nathan. It is a test." Liren's face softened, his expression shifting from clinical to compassionate. "It is an evolutionary filter. The galaxy is full of life, but it is not a nursery. It is a mature ecosystem. A civilization that wishes to join the galactic community must be able to master its own frequency. You cannot bring your chaos into the higher dimensions. You must clean your house first. Atlas is the great filter," Liren said softly. "It asks every civilization it meets one simple question: what are you? If you are a species of war," Liren continued, "the mirror will reflect war until you destroy yourselves. You will tear each other apart before you ever leave your gravity well. The galaxy remains safe from your madness. But if you are a species of peace," Liren's voice lifted, "if you can find the center of the storm, the mirror will reflect peace. It will amplify your love. It will accelerate your evolution. It will usher in a golden age of connection and telepathy." "So we're being judged," Nathan said bitterly. "No, you are being revealed," Liren corrected. "A mirror does not judge the face it reflects. It simply shows the truth. And right now, humanity is screaming the wrong answer at the sky." Nathan looked at the simulation. Earth was drowning in red. The feedback loop was tightening. "So we're doomed," he said, slumping against the counter. "We're in a death spiral. The more scared we get, the stronger the reflection. The stronger the reflection, the more scared we get. There's no way out. It is a spiral," Liren agreed. But the direction is not fixed. The mirror is neutral. It has no agenda. It only reflects what is given. If you change the input, you change the reflection. How? Nathan asked, looking up. I'm just one man. There are 7 billion people screaming fear. I can't shut them up. You do not stop the mirror, Liren said, stepping closer until he loomed over the doctor. And you do not silence the crowd. You break the cycle by introducing a new signal. You need an anchor. You need a transmission strong enough to disrupt the noise. The alien placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder. And that, Dr. Cross, is why I landed in your backyard. I did not come to save you from the comet. I came to teach you how to talk to it. Nathan paced the small medical module, the heels of his boots clicking rhythmically against the metal floor. The silence of the desert outside felt like a lie now. He picked up his tablet from the desk and tapped the screen awake. The blue glow illuminated his tired face as he scrolled through the global news feed. It was a kaleidoscope of madness. Look at this, Nathan muttered, half to himself, half to the alien watching him from the shadows. Iodine tablets sold out in London. There are no nuclear reactors near London. People are digging bunkers in Nebraska. A cult in Tokyo just drank poison to ascend before the impact. He turned the screen toward Liren. It makes no sense. The trajectory data has been public for weeks. NASA, the ESA, the Chinese Space Agency, they all agree. 3I, Atlas, will miss us by 3 million miles. The physical threat is non-existent. So why is the reaction existential? It's like the whole world woke up and decided to commit suicide. The asymmetric panic, Liren noted, his silver eyes scanning the chaotic headlines with clinical detachment. You are observing the symptoms of a feedback loop that has gone critical. Your media is part of the machine, Nathan. They are the secondary amplifiers. The alien walked over and tapped the glass of the tablet. The mirror atlas reflects the raw frequency of fear back to the planet. But your technology, your internet, your 24-hour news cycles, they act as repeaters. They pick up that initial signal of dread, package it into bite-sized graphics, and feed it back to the population in real. It is a closed loop of hysteria. You are not just reacting to the mirror. You are reacting to the reaction of the reaction. Lorenz swiped his finger across the air, creating a new holographic graph. It showed a jagged red line spiking upward exponentially. Look at the pattern, Liren instructed. It is fractal. The fear starts in the individual, the deep, gnawing insecurity of I am not safe. It travels to the community, the hoarding of toilet paper and water. It infects the nation, the closing of borders and the mobilization of armies. And finally, it reaches the planetary level, the anticipation of extinction. The mirror reflects it all. If you send it a whisper of anxiety, it shouts back a scream of terror. And your media holds the microphone up to the scream. Nathan set the tablet down, the images of riots in Paris burning into his retinas. But the scientists, he argued, trying to find a logical foothold. My colleague Sarah, she's the lead astrophysicist here. She has 3 PhDs. She looks at the same telemetry I do. She knows the math. But yesterday, I saw her hands shaking. She asked me for sedatives. She said she felt a weight coming from the sky. If she knows the rock isn't going to hit us, why is she falling apart? Because she is the most vulnerable of all. Liren said softly, she is looking at the hardware and ignoring the software. Liren projected an image of a human brain. highlighting the conflict between the frontal cortex logic and the amygdala fear. Your scientists are trained to trust their eyes, not their gut, the alien explained. They see a rock. They calculate mass, velocity, and vector. But they cannot calculate intent. They feel the overwhelming dread radiating from Atlas, the psychic pressure of the mirror, pushing against their consciousness, but their materialistic worldview gives them no framework to process it. It does not fit in their spreadsheet. So, Loren continued, their minds invent a reason. They experience a cognitive hallucination. They tell themselves, maybe the calculations are wrong. Maybe it will outgas and change course. Maybe it is an alien weapon. They project a physical danger to explain the energetic danger they feel. Sarah is terrified because her intuition is screaming that a monster is at the door. But her intellect is telling her it is just the wind. The dissonance is driving her mad. It's a blind spot, Nathan realized. We have a blind spot for consciousness. It is not just a blind spot, Lyran corrected. It is a defense mechanism. This brings us to the deeper challenge, Nathan. The biology of forgetfulness. Lyran moved to the window, looking out at the observatory dome where Sarah and the others were likely staring at their screens, paralyzed by the invisible pressure. Why does humanity resist the truth of the mirror? Lyran asked rhetorically. Why is it easier for you to believe that a rock is going to kill you than to believe that your own thoughts are reflected back to you? Because if it's a rock, Nathan answered slowly, the realization dawning on him, we're victims. We can't do anything about gravity. It's not our fault. Precisely, Lyran nodded. Victimhood is comfortable. It absolves you of responsibility. If Atlas is just a comet, you can die with a clear conscience. But if Atlas is a mirror, if the chaos in the streets is caused by the chaos in your own hearts, then you are responsible. Then you are the architects of your own nightmare. The alien turned to face Nathan, his presence looming large in the small room. To admit that you are co-creators, ... To admit that your fear is feeding the beast, ... requires a level of spiritual maturity that your species has been avoiding for millennia. It means you have to change. It means you have to grow up. And for the human ego, Nathan, change is more terrifying than death. You would rather die as innocent victims than live as responsible gods. Nathan felt the sting of the truth. He thought of his own life, how he had run to the desert to avoid the mesenses of connection. He had chosen the safety of isolation over the risk of participation. He had been playing the victim too. So we're stuck, Nathan said, his voice heavy. The scientists are blind because of their logic. The public is blind because of their fear. And the mirror just keeps getting louder. It's a perfect trap. It is a trap, Lyran agreed. But every trap has a release mechanism. The mirror is not designed to kill you, Nathan. It is designed to wake you up. The pain you are feeling, the panic, the dread. It is the fever that breaks the infection. The mirror will keep shouting until you stop listening to the noise and start listening to the silence. But how? Nathan asked, looking at the alien who had turned his world upside down. How do we break a cycle that is self-sustaining? If everyone is screaming, who is left to listen? You, Lyran said, pointing a long, grey finger at Nathan's chest. And anyone brave enough to stop being a reflection and start being a source. Nathan stepped out of the medical module and walked across the connecting gantry to the main dome. The air outside was freezing, the wind howling across the Atacama like a wounded animal. But inside the dome, the heat was suffocating. It was the collective heat of 30 bodies running on adrenaline and machines pushed to their breaking point. It smelled of stale coffee, ozone, and the sour, unmistakable scent of human terror. He found Sarah standing at the main telemetry station, her face illuminated by the harsh blue light of the holographic display. She looked like a ghost haunting her own life. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her skin pale and clammy, and her hands trembled visibly as she manipulated the projection of Atlas's trajectory. Next to her stood Carlos, the lead structural engineer from Argentina, a man usually known for his stoic humor and unshakable nerves, now pacing the small perimeter of the console like a caged tiger, chewing on a fingernail until it bled. "It's wobbling," Sarah whispered, her voice tight with a hysteria that was barely contained. She pointed a shaking finger at the vector line. "Look at the data, Nathan. Look at the vector. The comet. It's vibrating. It's undergoing a harmonic oscillation that shouldn't be possible in a vacuum. It's going to break up. If it breaks up at this velocity, the debris field will widen by 40 degrees. It will hit us. I knew it. The math was wrong. We're all dead." "The math isn't wrong, Sarah," Carlos snapped, though his own voice lacked any real conviction, cracking under the strain. "It's the sensors. The atmosphere is interfering with the LiDAR. We're getting ghost readings from the solar wind. It's not the sensors." Sarah screamed, slamming her hand on the console so hard the plastic housing cracked. "It's coming for us. Can't you feel it? It feels heavy. It feels like judgment. It knows we're watching it." Nathan stood in the doorway, gripping the frame. He felt it too. The wave of terror radiating from Sarah was physical, a heavy, suffocating blanket that hit him in the chest and triggered his own amygdala. His heart rate spiked. His breath caught in his throat. The ancient, reptilian part of his brain screamed, "Run, hide, panic, it's over." It would have been so easy to join them, to let the current of fear sweep him away into the abyss. It was the path of least resistance. But he remembered the silver eyes of Liren. He remembered the formula. "I am feeling Sarah's terror," Nathan thought, forcing his mind to detach from the visceral sensation in his gut. "It is powerful. It is overwhelming. But it is not mine." He took a slow, deep breath, counting to 4, expanding his diaphragm against the tightness in his chest. "I do not consent to this frequency," he told himself, visualizing a wall of white light slamming down between his mind and the chaos of the room. "I am the sky. She is the storm. The storm cannot hurt the sky." He closed his eyes for a microsecond and conjured the image of the stars above the desert cold, clear and infinite. He summoned a feeling of absolute stability, a frequency of unshakable rock. He anchored himself. "Sarah," Nathan said. He didn't shout, but his voice cut through the cacophony of the room with a strange, resonant authority that made several heads turn. Sarah whipped around, her eyes wild. "Nathan, do you have the sedatives? I can't sleep. None of us can sleep. The dreams, they're getting worse." "I have something better," Nathan said, walking into the circle of panicked scientists, moving with a deliberate slowness that contrasted sharply with their frenetic energy. "I have the truth." Carlos snorted, a harsh, cynical sound. "Unless the truth is a shuttle ticket off this rock, we don't want it. Doc, spare us the philosophy. The comet isn't wobbling." "Sarah," Nathan said, locking eyes with her, ignoring Carlos's bitterness, "you are. The vibration you see in the data is but. You're projecting your fear onto the instrument readings. The machine is reading your pulse, not the comets. Don't psychoanalyze me, Sarah shouted, stepping into his personal space, her anger flaring as a defense mechanism. I'm a physicist. This is hard data. I deal in numbers, not feelings, is it? Nathan challenged gently, his voice remaining level, a flat line of calm. Or is it the mirror? We are looking at an object that reflects consciousness. You are terrified, so the object looks terrifying. You are screaming at it, and it is screaming back. Carlos stepped in, his face flushed with exhaustion and anger. You've been out in the sun too long, Nathan. Are you saying the comet is psychic? That's a stress-induced hallucination. You need to go back to your med bay and take some of your own pills. I'm saying we have a choice, Nathan said, holding his ground against their skepticism, feeling the weight of their fear pressing against his anchor. We can keep screaming at the sky and watch the readings get worse. We can keep feeding the beast until it consumes us, or we can calm down. Right now, just for 5 minutes, we treat this room like a sanctuary. We stop the noise. We can't stop. Sarah cried, tears finally spilling over, washing away the anger. My family is in London. They're rioting. My sister called me. She said they're burning the grocery stores. She said there's no food left. How can I be calm when my sister is going to die? As if on cue, Nathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was his own sister, Lisa, in Ohio. He knew before he looked what the message would be. He could feel her panic traveling across thousands of miles of fiber optics, a scream seeking a listener. Answer it, Nathan said, pulling the phone out. Put it on speaker. Sarah hesitated, then tapped her comms unit to monitor the call. Nathan swiped the screen. His sister's voice filled the room, jagged with sobs, distorted by hyperventilation. Nathan, Nathan, are you there? They're saying the impact is confirmed. The news. They're saying we have 3 days. I don't have enough water. The kids are crying. I don't know what to do. I can't protect them. The fear in the room spiked. The alarms on the consoles seemed to blare louder. The red line on the trajectory graph dipped sharply toward Earth. Nathan stepped forward. He placed his hand on the comms unit, grounding it. He didn't speak to Sarah. He didn't speak to the room. He spoke to the voice on the line, and through it, to the terror of the world. Lisa, Nathan said. This is Nathan. Listen to my voice, he brought. He didn't just speak words. He pushed the frequency of safety through the phone line. He imagined wrapping his sister, and Sarah's sister, and every frightened child in the world in a blanket of lead-lined, impenetrable calm. He visualized the feeling of a warm hearth, of a fortress, of a mountain that had stood for 1,000,000 years. You are safe, Nathan said, his voice dropping an octave, resonating in the chest. The news is a lie. The rock is missing us. Look at your children, Lisa. Look at their faces right now. Are they hurt? No, ... Double quotes, the voice trembled, catching on a sob. Then be here, Nathan commanded gently. Be in this moment. The future hasn't happened. The past is gone. Right now, in your kitchen, the lights are on. The floor is solid. You are safe. Breathe with me. He inhaled loudly, a deep, exaggerated breath. The entire room, Sarah Carlos, the junior techs, watched him. And unconsciously, driven by the biological imperative of mirror neurons, they inhaled too. For a minute, the only sound in the dome was breathing. In and out. In and out. The frenetic energy began to dissipate, replaced by a strange, heavy stillness. "Okay," Lisa's voice came back, sounding confused but slower, the hysteria draining away. "Okay, I'm breathing. It feels ... quieter." "Why does it feel quieter?" "Because you stopped screaming," Nathan said. "Keep breathing. Turn off the TV. Go hug your kids. Make them dinner. You are the anchor of your house, Lisa. If you hold the line, they will be safe. Do you understand?" "I think so," she whispered. "I love you, Nathan. I love you too. Stay in the center." He cut the connection. The silence in the dome was deafening. The alarms had stopped blinking red and settled into a steady, rhythmic yellow pulse. Sarah looked at the screen. Her mouth fell open. The wobble in the trajectory data was gone. The erratic vibration had smoothed out. The line was straight again, missing Earth by a comfortable margin. "What did you do?" Sarah whispered, looking at Nathan with a mix of awe and deep, unsettling suspicion. "You didn't touch the console. You didn't recalibrate the sensors. What did you do?" "I changed the input," Nathan said, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but standing tall. "I stopped feeding the beast. The mirror stopped reflecting the earthquake because we stopped shaking." The days that followed were a blur of discipline and resistance. It wasn't an instant victory. Nathan didn't win them over with that single moment. Carlos still made jokes about Dr. Zen and rolled his eyes whenever Nathan suggested a break for meditation. Sarah still had panic attacks, waking up screaming in the barracks, convinced the sky was falling. But the seed was planted. The proof was in the room. They had felt the shift. Nathan became the anchor. He made it his full-time job. He realized that treating the physical bodies of the crew was secondary to treating their frequency. Every morning, before checking blood pressures or dispensing vitamins, he sat in meditation for an hour, generating a field of intense gratitude. He walked through the station with a deliberate slowness. When people started shouting, he lowered his voice. When people speculated about doom, he spoke about the future with absolute certainty. He became a living tuning fork, vibrating at a pitch that forced everyone around him to harmonize or leave. He failed sometimes. There were nights when the collective scream of the planet was so loud he woke up shaking, his own demons clawing at his throat, reaching for the bottle of scotch he kept in his desk drawer. But he used the protocol. Observe, neutralize, broadcast. He poured the whiskey down the sink, watching the amber liquid swirl away, and went back to the window to transmit peace to the mirror. He fought the war sitting still. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, the atmosphere in the Atacama changed. The arguments stopped. The data streams stabilized. The astronomers started sleeping again. The air in the mess hall felt lighter. Carlos, the cynic, started joining Nathan for coffee in the mornings, just sitting in silence, soaking up the calm like a lizard soaking up the sun. "I don't believe in your aliens, Nathan," Carlos admitted one morning, looking out at the sunrise over the salt flats. "And I don't believe in magic. But I believe in you. You single quotes re ... Different you used to be as scared and lonely as the rest of us. Now you're like a mountain. It's annoying, but it's helpful. My hands stopped shaking yesterday." "It's contagious," Nathan smiled, sipping his coffee. "Calm is just as infectious as fear, Carlos. You just have to be a super spreader." 3 weeks after the encounter, the shift went global. Nathan was in the medical bay with Lyron, checking the healing of the alien's scar. Lyran pointed to the holographic map of Earth. The angry, muddy red cloud that had suffocated the planet was breaking up. Patches of blue and gold were appearing, small islands of coherence in the ocean of chaos. "Critical mass," Lyran announced, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "You are not the only one, Nathan. There are thousands of anchors waking up. People in cities, in villages, in bunkers who realized the panic was a lie. People who chose to turn off the news and turn on their hearts. Look at the data." Nathan checked the internet. The headlines were shifting. The tone was changing. Grassroots peace movements sweep Europe. Global meditation events scheduled for Saturday. Stock markets stabilize as panic buying ceases. It wasn't utopia. There were still problems, still conflicts. But the hysteria, the irrational, self-destructive madness was evaporating like mist in the morning sun. The feedback loop had been interrupted. The mirror was no longer receiving a unanimous vote for chaos. It was receiving a mixed ballot. And because the frequency of peace is higher amplitude, it was winning the vote. That evening, Sarah knocked on the door of the medical module. She looked different-rested, her eyes clear for the first time in months. She held a printout of the latest spectral analysis of Atlas. "It's changing color," Sarah said, her voice trembling with scientific excitement, not fear. "The object? It was absorbing in the infrared spectrum last week. Stress, low energy. Now, ... Look, it's shifting to ultraviolet. It's glowing, Nathan. It's almost ... beautiful." She looked at Nathan, and for the first time, she dropped the mask of the academic. She looked at him simply as a human being. "I know you're hiding someone in here," she said quietly. "I've seen the extra rations. I've seen the energy spikes on the grid. I'm not stupid." Nathan tensed, stepping between her and the shadows where Lyran stood. "Sarah." "I don't want to see him," she interrupted, raising a hand. "I don't need to know. Whatever you're doing, whatever method you're using, it saved us. I was ready to drive my car off a cliff last week, Nathan. I had the keys in my hand. But when I'm around you, I remember that I want to live. I remember that the stars aren't enemies." She looked at the printout again, tracing the curve of the light spectrum. "We're not victims, are we?" she asked, the question hanging in the air like a prayer. "No," Nathan answered firmly. "We're creators. We just forgot how to drive." Sarah nodded. She ripped the printout in half, a symbolic gesture of breaking with the old paradigm. "I'm going to tell command that the sensors were calibrating. The threat is downgraded. We're going to be okay." "We are," Nathan agreed. "We already are." She left, closing the door softly. Nathan turned to Lyran, who stepped out of the shadows, his silver skin glowing in the dim light. "She does not believe in aliens," Lyran observed, "but she believes in the frequency. That is enough. The science will catch up later. The soul has already arrived." Nathan felt a shift in his own chest. The loneliness, the deep, structural ache that had driven him to the desert was gone. He realized he wasn't isolated anymore. He was part of a network. He was a node in a planetary grid of people who were holding the light. He had never been more connected in his life. The test was over. The awakening had begun. The night Lyran left, the sky over the Atacama was clearer than Nathan had ever seen it. The dust storms had settled, leaving the atmosphere scrubbed clean, a perfect lens for the galaxy. The object, 3I Atlas, was still visible on the observatory's long-range sensors, but its trajectory was carrying it away from the sun, back into the deep, frozen solitude of interstellar space. On the monitors, it was no longer glowing with that angry, muddy red light of fear. It was pulsing with a cool, rhythmic bluer, visual confirmation that the collective fever of Earth had finally broken. Nathan stood by his jeep, the engine idling with a soft, mechanical purr. Lyron stood a few feet away, his silhouette framed against the sprawling arm of the Milky Way. The bandages were gone. The alien looked fully restored, his pale grey skin shimmering in the moonlight like polished hematite. He didn't look like a crash victim anymore. He looked like a traveler who had simply paused for a moment on a long journey. The reflection is stabilizing, Lyron projected, his mental voice sounding like a distant bell ringing in a canyon. The mirror is moving out of range. The pressure on your collective psyche is lifting. You have weathered the storm, Nathan. We got lucky, Nathan said, leaning against the hood of the Jeep, feeling the cold metal against his back. If the panic had lasted another week, if the supply chains had broken completely, I don't think we would have made it back. Luck is a variable for the unprepared, Lyron corrected, his silver eyes locking onto Nathan's. This was not luck. This was choice. Enough of you chose the light to tip the scales. You passed the test that many civilizations fail. You looked into the abyss of your own shadow, and instead of blinking, you turned on a light. The alien stepped closer. He placed a long, slender hand on Nathan's shoulder. The telepathic link flared one last time, but it wasn't an exchange of data or warnings. It was an exchange of pure feeling. Nathan felt a wave of profound gratitude wash over him. Not just Lyron's gratitude, but the gratitude of a watching universe. It was a feeling of being seen, of being known, and of being valued. I must go, Lyron said. My people are waiting at the rendezvous point beyond the orbit of Mars. But do not think this is the end. The mirror will return. It may not be a rock next time. It may be a solar flare. It may be a shift in your magnetic poles. It may be a crisis of your own making. The test will come in many forms until the lesson is permanent. Will I see you again? Nathan asked, surprising himself with the lump in his throat. He had spent his life running from connection, yet now, saying goodbye to a being from another world felt like losing a limb. You do not need to see me, Lyron smiled. A rare, radiant expression that lit up the desert night. You are no longer the lonely doctor in the desert, Nathan. You are connected. The network is active. You will never be alone again. Look up. Nathan looked at the stars. We are always there, Lyron whispered. With that, Lyron turned and walked into the darkness. He didn't board a hidden ship. He simply ... faded. His vibrational rate accelerated. He blurred, shifting out of the visible spectrum, becoming a streak of pure silver light that shot upward, joining the tapestry of the stars. Nathan stood alone in the desert, but for the first time in 4 years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full. It felt pregnant with possibility. 2 days later, the medical module was packed into boxes. The shelves were stripped bare. The telescope monitors were powered down, their blinking lights extinguished. Nathan zipped up his duffel bag, the sound loud in the quiet room. He looked around the small metal box that had been his prison and his sanctuary. He thought of the man who had arrived here 3 years ago, broken, cynical, running from the noise of humanity. That man was dead. He had died in the desert, replaced by someone stronger, someone who understood that the only way out is through. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching him. She held 2 cups of coffee, the steam rising in the cold morning air. "You're really leaving?" she asked, handing him a cup. "The crisis is over. We could use you here. Carlos is going to miss his morning therapy sessions." "My work here is done," Nathan said, taking the coffee. "The astronomers can handle the scrapes and bruises. I'm needed somewhere else." "Where?" Sarah asked. "Back to Chicago." "Everywhere," Nathan said, slinging the heavy bag over his shoulder. "The city, the hospitals, the schools, the places where the noise is loudest. That's where the anchors need to be. It's easy to be peaceful in a desert, Sarah. The real work is being peaceful in a traffic jam." He walked out to his jeep, his boots crunching on the gravel. The sun was blindingly bright on the salt flats, turning the world into a sheet of white fire. He didn't put on his sunglasses. He wanted to see it all. He realized that running to the desert to find God was a mistake. God wasn't hiding in the silence. God was in the chaos, waiting to be organized. God was in the messy, loud, terrified hearts of people, waiting for someone to remind them who they were. He wasn't going back to be just a doctor. He was going back to be a bridge. He would teach his patients that their health wasn't just about pills and surgery. It was about frequency. He would teach the terrified that their fear was a choice, a physiological event they could control. He would integrate the hard science of the West with the soft wisdom of the stars. As he drove away, watching the white dome of the observatory shrink in his rearview mirror, he realized the truth Lyran had taught him. Nothing ever goes back to normal. It just continues differently. The world had seen the abyss, and it had blinked. Now, it was time to open its eyes. The desert had done its job. It had broken him open so the light could get in. Now, he was taking that light back to the world that thought it was dark. The story of the cosmic mirror is not just a story about a comet passing in the night. It is a metaphor for the reality you are living in right now. Look at your world. Look at the news feeds. Look at the comments section on this video. Do you see the anger? Do you see the fear? Do you see the division? That is not random noise. That is a reflection. You are living in a giant echo chamber. The universe is constantly asking you one simple question. What are you? And whatever you scream at it, it screams back. If you scream, "I am a victim," the universe will give you tyrants to oppress you. If you scream, "I am poor," the universe will give you bills you cannot pay. If you scream, "I am afraid," the universe will give you monsters to fight. The mirror is neutral. It does not judge. It only amplifies. But the secret that they don't teach you in school, or on the news, or in the halls of government, is that you can change the broadcast. You do not need an alien to land in your backyard to tell you this. You already know it. You feel it in your gut every time you choose kindness over anger. You feel it every time you choose hope over despair. You feel the shift in the room when you decide to be the calmest person in it. You are the anchor. When the world goes crazy, and it will go crazy again, because that is the nature of growth. Do not join the madness. Do not become another amplifier for the noise. Do not let the media hijack your amygdala. Stand still, breathe, neutralize the fear, and broadcast peace. You might think you are insignificant. You might think you are just one person in a sea of billions, a tiny drop in an infinite ocean. But remember Lyran's lesson. Intensity beats volume. A single candle can be seen for miles in the dark. A single, coherent mind can stabilize a room full of panic. You are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. The mirror is waiting. The test is ongoing. Every morning when you wake up, you are casting a vote for the timeline you want to inhabit. What signal will you send today? If this story resonated with you, if you felt the truth of the frequency vibrating in your bones, then you are part of the crew. You are one of the anchors. Do not let this feeling fade when the video ends. Do not let the algorithm distract you with cat videos or political rage. Carry it with you. If you want to learn the practical techniques Nathan used, how to master your own frequency, how to override the fear response, and how to become immune to collective panic, I have written a guide. It is linked below. It is the manual for the modern anchor. But more importantly, make the choice right now. Don't wait for the next crisis. Don't wait for the next comment. Type it in the comments. Declare it to the mirror. Let the world see your vote. I choose peace. Let the algorithm know. Let the world know. Let the universe know. The broadcast begins with you. You are the signal. You are the cure. Loneliness, Liren observed, the word arriving with a flavor of melancholy. Deep, ancient, but not bitter. It is a structural loneliness. You have built walls, Doctor. Thick walls. I like the quiet, Nathan defended weakly. No, Liren corrected gently. You fear the noise. I see the scar tissue in your field. I see a city, Chicago. I see neon lights. I see screaming. I see you standing in a room full of people, holding a device to restart a heart, but feeling like a ghost. You came to the desert not to find the stars, but to hide from the pain of your own species. Nathan stepped back, shocked. This stranger, this being from another world, had just dissected his soul in 10 seconds, with more accuracy than years of therapy. You are a seeker who stopped seeking, Liren continued, his mental voice soft, compassionate. You look at the telescope, hoping to see life out there, because you have given up on finding intelligent life down here. You feel that you do not belong to this tribe. You feel ... alien. Nathan looked down at his hands, the hands that had just saved a life. I just wanted to know if there was something else, something more than ... this. He waved his hand at the dusty room, the limited world, and that longing, Liren said, is why I am here. That frequency, the frequency of the question, is a beacon. You think you are invisible in this desert, Nathan Cross, but you are mistaken. Liren walked to the small window of the module and looked out at the star-studded sky of the Atacama. Come here, Liren commanded. Nathan joined him. The Milky Way was a river of diamonds above them. You ask if you are alone, Liren said. Look. He placed his hand on Nathan's shoulder. The telepathic link flared. Suddenly, Nathan's vision shifted. The sky didn't change, but his perception of it did. He saw lines of connection. He saw faint, shimmering webs connecting star systems. He felt the presence of minds, billions of them out in the void. This sector is crowded, Liren revealed. Your Earth is under observation. Dozens of civilizations watch you directly. Hundreds more watch indirectly through the data streams. You were the most popular show in the quadrant. Why? Nathan whispered, looking up with new eyes. We're primitive. We kill each other. We're destroying the planet. Because you are a paradox, Liren said. You are a species capable of the most horrific violence, yet, in the same breath, capable of the most irrational, beautiful compassion. Unithan Crosser, the proof. You were terrified of me. Your biology screamed predator, yet you saved me. That contradiction is fascinating to us. It is rare. Most species are logical, or they are savage. You are both. You are angels sleeping in the bodies of apes. Lyran turned from the window to face Nathan. The expression on his alien face grew serious, the air in the room thickening with gravity. But the experiment is reaching a critical point, Lyran warned. The paradox is becoming unstable. The object you call 3i, Atlas. It is not here to watch. It is here to measure. And right now, the reading is dangerous. Atlas. Nathan frowned. The comet. What does a rock have to do with this? Lyran shook his head. It is not a comet. That is the lie you tell yourselves to sleep at night. It is a mirror, and it is holding a reflection up to your world that you are not ready to see. The panic you see on the news, the madness in the streets. It is not coming from the rock. It is coming from you. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Sit down, Dr. Lyran said, his silver eyes glowing. I have explained the anatomy of your loneliness. Now I must explain the anatomy of your world's fear. The surgery is over. The lesson begins. Kalor Fundi, MCC1, Nantem Vietls, TNSP, the physics of frequency. TSN, Vici Tit, MCC, Navy VIG. Daikung 700T, Theohung, UCSU, CA Bun. Thit LPPC, SS Koa, HCC Guy, Town Show, Tone BN, Cao Chian, Part D, Decoding the Cosmic Mirror 1, The Physics of Frequency, TTS, The Audio Landscape Shifts. The clinical hum of the medical bay fades, replaced by a low, oscillating synth droner, theta wave, sound designed to induce a trance-like state in the listener. Lyran's voice becomes dominant, clear, resonant, and carrying the weight of a professor explaining the laws of a new universe to a novice. Nathan sat on the swivel stool, his back to the blinking medical monitors. The room was dim, lit only by the starlight filtering through the reinforced glass and the faint, bioluminescent glow emanating from Lyran's bandages. The alien sat on the edge of the exam table, his posture regal despite the trauma he had endured. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the promise of a revelation that would shatter Nathan's worldview. You are a man of science. Nathan, Lyran projected, his thought voice cutting through the quiet like a laser. So let us speak in the language of science. But we must upgrade your vocabulary. You have been taught that the universe is made of matter atoms, rocks, gas, biological tissue. This is a kindergarten understanding. It is the physics of the sandbox. The true universe is not made of particles. It is made of frequency. Nathan crossed his arms, his defense mechanism kicking in. I know about frequency, he said, his voice sounding tired. Light waves, sound waves, radiation. We measure them every day at the observatory. It's just energy moving through space. You measure the external waves, Lyran corrected gently, but you ignore the internal ones. This is the great blindness of your species. You treat thoughts and emotions as if they are ghosts invisible, weightless, private biological byproducts that disappear once you stop feeling them. You believe that your anger stays inside your skull. You believe your fear is a private event. The alien leaned forward, his silver eyes glowing with intensity. They are not ghosts, Doctor. In the physics of the higher dimensions, a thought is a scalar wave. An emotion is a magnetic field. They have mass, they have velocity, and most importantly, they have consequences. Lyran raised a long, slender hand. The air in the room shimmered, and a small, complex holographic projection appeared between them. It wasn't technological. It was a mental projection made visible by Lyran's will. It showed a human silhouette surrounded by a torus-shaped energy field, pulsing rhythmically. Look at the field, Lyran instructed. This is the biomagnetic aura. It is not poetry. It is physics. When this human feels love, or compassion, or gratitude, observe the geometry. The hologram shifted. The field expanded, glowing with a soft gold light. The waves were rapid, high frequency, and perfectly symmetrical. This is high frequency, Lyran explained. It is coherent. It organizes matter. It heals. It creates stability in the local reality field. Then the image shifted violently. The golden field collapsed. It turned a jagged, muddy red. The waves became erratic, spiking and crashing like a chaotic seismograph reading. This is fear, Lyran said, the word vibrating with heaviness in Nathan's mind. Fear is a low, slow, dense frequency. It creates dissonance. It disrupts the cellular structure, but it does not stay in the body. Look, in the hologram, the jagged red waves didn't just hurt the silhouette. They shot out from the body like radio waves, distorting the air around it. When you feel fear, Nathan, you are not just having a bad day. You are literally broadcasting a signal of chaos into the environment. You are polluting the ether just as surely as a factory pollutes a river. You are changing the physical properties of the space around you. So you're saying feelings change reality? Nathan asked, skepticism dripping from his words. That sounds like New Age magic. I can't measure a feeling with a ruler. It is quantum mechanics, Loren countered sharply. Your own physicists Heisenberg, Bohr proven this a century ago. They proved that the observer affects the experiment. The electron behaves differently when it is watched. Why? Because the watching is an act of consciousness, and consciousness is a force. You humans are not passive observers walking through a pre-made world. You are co-creators. The alien paused to let the concept sink in. You are constantly building the world with your broadcast. Every thought is a brick. Every emotion is the mortar. But you are unconscious builders. You are like children playing with a flamethrower, unaware that the fire comes from your own hands. You burn your world down with fear and then ask God why there is so much smoke. Nathan looked at the hologram, then at his own hands. He thought of the tension in the observatory, the unspoken anxiety of his colleagues. He realized Lyran wasn't talking about metaphors. He was talking about a mechanical process. And this brings us to the problem, Lyran said, his tone darkening. An individual broadcasting fear is a small distortion, a drop in the ocean. But a species, 7 billion transmitters broadcasting the same signal of panic simultaneously. That is not a distortion, Nathan. That is a storm, and storms attract lightning. You mentioned water earlier, Lyran added. Your planet is 70% water. Your bodies are 70% water. Water is the most programmable substance in the universe. It holds memory. When you scream fear into the void, the water in the air, in the soil, and in the bodies of your neighbors, it remembers. You are literally drowning yourselves in a vibrational poison of your own making. Nathan turned away from the hologram of the fear field and looked out the reinforced window. The desert night was vast and silent, but now that silence felt heavy. He looked toward the northern horizon, where he knew the object was lurking in the dark, invisible to the naked eye, but burning bright on every infrared sensor in the observatory.